Welcome back to These Things Are Written on this Monday. As we begin a new week, we begin a new book of prophecy. This is the book of Nahum. It is 3 short chapters. We will cover it in 1 week. So hang on and let's get started right away. Chapter 1, verse 1. An oracle concerning Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum of Elkosh. We're just going to stop there because this shares a lot of information that we need to know and understand and to talk about. First of all, an oracle concerning Nineveh. An oracle, or some translations say a burden concerning Nineveh. A burden that would of Nineveh, a burden that Nahum needed to express to get out concerning Nineveh as well. So there's kind of a double meaning of that word. A little bit different from how many of the books are stated. They say the word of the Lord came to. This is that oracle. Again, we know that it is from God. It is an oracle or a burden concerning Nineveh that really Nahum had received. Now, Nahum, we don't know much about him other than he was an Elkoshite of Elkosh, the city, but we don't know much about that city. Hints and clues that we have, including in the 4th verse, it talks about places in which would be the northern kingdom of Israel, not around Jerusalem, but more in the area of Samaria. And again, this is concerning Nineveh. So I'm going to put the map up here. And as you look at it, the nation of Assyria, and this was about 50 years before Nahum wrote, when Assyria was threatening. Assyria came and destroyed Samaria in the red. It also laid low Judah. While they weren't conquered, Jerusalem was spared. They ended up having to pay great tribute then to Assyria later on. So you see Assyria way up there, in Nineveh, the capital is on the far part of it. So he's speaking this most likely in Jerusalem, or maybe even Israel, the northern kingdom, speaking it against Nineveh and the destruction that God was going to give to it because of how Nineveh, although by the command of God, destroyed the city, destroyed Samaria, and almost destroyed Jerusalem in punishment of God's people for their sins. They too would get punished. It's interesting that the word Nahum means comforter, when Nahum's words really aren't speaking much comfort. Let's continue with verses 2 through 5. The Lord is jealous and avenging God. The Lord is avenging and wrathful. The Lord takes vengeance on his adversaries and keeps wrath for his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power. The Lord will by no means clear the guilty. His way is in whirlwind and storm. The clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the seas and makes it dry. He dries up the rivers. Bashan and Carmel wither. The bloom of Lebanon withers. The mountains quake before him. The hills melt. The earth heaves before him. The world and all who dwell in it. Really showing the great power of God, isn't it? Showing the great power and might of the Lord, of how he's a jealous and avenging God. He is jealous, and because of the sins of the Assyrians, their city would be destroyed. We'll get more into that. As we look at the power, Bashan and Carmel are those areas of the northern kingdom, which makes one think that Elkosh was probably in that area. Lebanon was close as well, seaside of the northern kingdom also. Look at the power. Whirlwind, storms, cloud, dust, or the dust of his feet, rebukes the sea, makes it dry. The earth heaves before him. All of those things that happen with the power of the one true God. He is the great God. Let's continue with verse 6. Who can stand before his indignation? Who can endure the heat of his anger? His wrath is poured out like a fire, and the rocks are broken into pieces by him. Truly, who can stand before the Lord's indignation? Who can stand in his wrath? No one can. And we all deserve that punishment because of our sinfulness. But yet Jesus stood in our place and stood before him, taking on his anger, the heat of his anger, his wrath being poured out like fire upon him, on Jesus on the cross, for you and for me. Who indeed can stand before our Lord? Now we can, because the Lord views us not through the eyes of anger, but through the eyes of mercy and forgiveness won for us by Jesus Christ. The Assyrians, not so much. And we'll hear more of the pending disaster and destruction that would come upon the city of Nineveh. We'll see you tomorrow.